If you don't know anything else about Philadelphia International, you need to know about Dexter Wansel. His genius as a songwriter, producer. Oh, another great sample. You big Crit fans, because I'm a big Crit fan. Remember Booby Miles from Forever and a Day? That is Morning Tears. Dexter Wansel wrote and produced that for MFSB's Philadelphia Freedom album. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to day number 12, 5512 of the Black Music Month 30 series here on the Groove Line with your host, Chris Stevens. Hopefully, you all are doing well out there. It's Philly Friday around here. And the way I had the schedule set up, I had to sort of deviate from it because, well, I had guests. We had other people that we had to honor. And we had to honor this man on Philly Friday. We lost him May 31st. Of course, we're talking about the legendary Mr. Dexter Wansel, one of the most underrated producers, singers, songwriters, and instrumentalist of his day. He, of course, died on May 31st, 2026. He was born August 22nd, 1950, which makes him a Leo. And he was the secret sauce during the latter half of the 70s for the sound of Philadelphia and Philadelphia International Records. Because as I've talked about on this channel many times, a lot of the people who helped Philly International get off the ground pieced out after they felt like they weren't getting their fair share. And that's when you had people like Dexter Wansel and Gene McFadden, John Whitehead, and Victor Carstarfin Sr. Damn, all of them are going. Golly. Yeah, those four kept the lights on in Philadelphia International in the second half of the 70s, and they have all now transitioned. So rest in peace to those gentlemen, and, condolences to their families, obviously. But talking about Dexter, we got to start with the fact that he grew up in this business. Like, he was a Uptown Theater gopher boy in his youth, and his step uncle was the legendary Georgie Woods. If you're a Philadelphia radio buff of any vintage, you know who Georgie Woods with the goods was for WDAS. And he literally learned everything from, running those errands for people at the Uptown Theater in the late 50s and early 60s. Because when you look at it, Philly was a huge stop for a lot of musicians. I mean, James stopped through, the Motown Review stopped through, so many others that weren't, that were like nationwide names, like others in the early 60s that escaped me at this point in time. But if you're an Uptown Theater kid, from Philly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And Dexter learned from that. And before he could even get into the music business, he got drafted into the service because he was 18 when he got called into Vietnam. Remember, a lot of cats didn't make it back from Vietnam. We talked about this with Walter Scott when he got drafted, when he was working with when Whispers finally started getting off the ground out in Oakland. He was the first one. He was the one drafted because, well, he was a couple minutes older than Scotty. You can't take twins. You can only take the oldest one. And Walter said it himself. Them couple minutes he was born first ended up hurting him. So Walter Scott went off to war. And Dexter Wansel, a little younger, because I think Walter was like in his mid-20s, but Dexter was like 18, 19 serving in Vietnam. And he got an honorable discharge and started, going back to playing keyboards and different things for different groups around Philly. So we get to about 73, 74. And for some strange reason, Philly International Sigma Sound Studios, which was run by Joe Tarzia at the time, had these synthesizers like the ARP 2600 that nobody else could figure out how to work. And Dexter apparently was very gadget oriented. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So he learned how to play the ARP and the other synthesizers, and that made him a very important man around Philadelphia International, because even as disco started to take off, you started to feel some electric vibes. Stevie had done things with the ARP and the Moog, and of course the Tonto synthesizer. You had a few others who were delving into electric music at the time. So in order to stay up to beat, up to par, you had to be up with the times. And Dexter Wansel was Philadelphia International's computer whiz. And that's why you get the transcendent album Life on Mars, which came out in 1976. Damn, 70. I told y'all, man, 76 was a damn good year. And that album, for me, the standout on that album is Theme from the Planets, because it literally takes you on a ride through the cosmos, a smooth ride through the cosmos. Because you gotta remember, 76, this is when cars were big and bold. The OGs used to say you could see the front end coming around the corner 5 minutes before the rest of the car does. You could imagine somebody in a 75, 76-ish Cadillac sedan DeVille or a Chevy Caprice or a Ford LTD or even a Chrysler New Yorker, because New Yorkers were still popular at that point in time. I don't know how that happened because Chrysler sucked in the 70s. I digress. But you can actually listen to Theme from the Planets and imagine somebody just cruising around Philly, around South Jersey, around Delaware, around Chester, just bumping that. And you know the synth parts, that's all Dexter. Like, again, that is my favorite song from Planet from Life on Mars, because that album he created as an answer to David Bowie's question about is there life on Mars from a previous David Bowie album. Bowie was hella influential on Black culture, and that's why people mourned when he died. But yeah, Dexter Wansel said I can answer that question myself, and that's where Life on Mars came from. And it is an album that jazz lovers stand by, fusion lovers stand by, hip hop heads who have used those drum beats over and over again. Shouts out to Charles Collins. Countless times. So, I mean, Dexter Wansel, he was already starting to become a man in demand, and then he found a co-writing partner named Cynthia Biggs, and they wrote some of the best records Philly International put out, not just in the second half of the 70s and the early part of the 80s, but of all time. One of my favorites that they've written that nobody really talks about, we talked about Dee Dee Sharp on this show with Miss Carla Benson, and there was a song on Dee Dee Sharp's album called the album was called What Color Is Love, and it's the opening track. It's called I Believe in Love. Oh, I believe in love, sweet things it's made of. This time for you and me. One thing I'm sure of. Just listen to that song. It's a Quiet Storm classic for Philly old schoolers, and it's one of the best songs they ever wrote together. Of course, which one would you prefer first? Would you prefer Love TKO or If Only You Knew as the best Dexter Wansel, Cynthia Biggs written song? I want to know what y'all think. Because for me, I still Love TKO is so special because, believe it or not, that's a cover. Somebody else did that before Teddy got his hands on it. But Teddy made it his own because, of course, that's what Teddy did. But I still think If Only You Knew was just a special song because Patti LaBelle, her solo career, it wasn't floundering, but it gave her a boost to keep up with what was happening in the early 80s. And that was something that just was so special in the way it was written. I must have rehearsed my lines 1,000 times until I had to memorize. But every time I try to tell you the word to get up the nerves, the words just don't come out right. We've all been there. Every single one of us. If you haven't, sorry for you. But if you've been there, you know. And that is just, it's between those two. It's between those two for me. But Dexter Wansel wrote some great stuff for everybody. For crying out loud, I think I'll Stay Home Today by Billy Paul is the best rain, cuddle, redacted song I can think of. Because he just, the way Dexter just wrote that, it was just so perfect. Don't be scared of the thunder and storm. I could never leave you alone. I think I'll stay home today. Just make it. Because think about the person who's delivering the message. Billy Paul was a man in demand for most of this first half of the 1970s. Well, you can probably say the entire 1970s to be completely honest, but this is a dude who's always on the go. He's got things to do. He's got a show to make. He's got a radio appearance to do. He's got an album to cut, a single to cut, or whatever. And those of us who grew up in the Delaware Valley know that when summer comes, we get some nasty storms. We'll probably get some nasty storms later on this weekend because it's like 130 degrees outside. Well, not literally 130, but it's still pretty damn hot. But yeah, usually storms follow those kind of heat waves, and sometimes you just don't want to go outside. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to go to the gym, in my case. You don't want to do a lot of stuff. So you just want to stay home, let that rain and thunder do what it's going to do, and relax. And if you're fortunate enough to have someone to relax with, that is a great song to relax with. And yes, oh wow, I forgot another Dexter and Cynthia collabo. Hurry Up This Way Again by the Stylistics, which Jay-Z, of course, sampled for Politics as Usual for Reasonable Doubt. But yes, the way that song goes, Russell Tompkins Jr. is in pain the entirety of the song. Oh, how it hurts to love someone knowing they love someone else. Like, there's pain throughout that whole song. I got to have you. Yeah, I mean, that is an incredible song that Dexter Wansel and Cynthia Biggs wrote together. Hurry Up This Way Again. Like, people, again, if you've never been the side piece or the maintenance man or the boyfriend number two or the girlfriend on the side, count your blessings. Because there's some feelings involved with that. I mean, yeah, it's usually about, a better opportunity at chemistry behind closed doors, but there's also feelings involved too. And I'm not excusing cheating. Don't get me wrong. Trust me. I have to tell you guys about my overnight podcast where I talk about all my dating tales and how sometimes, being the side dude is a thankless job. I'll put the link to my Patreon in the description if you guys want to subscribe to that. But yeah, Hurry Up This Way Again. Of course, Nights Over Egypt. We haven't even talked about Nights Over Egypt yet, which of course came out the year I was born, 1981. And just the way that song was written and the keyboard parts on that, Dexter Wansel was a genius, man. I mean, we haven't even talked more about The Sweetest Pain and the song which the Locks sample from Money, Power, and Respect. I can't remember the name off the rip. It's going to mess with me for a while. But Sweetest Pain was probably one of the, best songs of the post Baker Harrison Young era of instrumentation for Philly International. And then, of course, Mysteries of the World was the last MFSB album, which came out in 1980. That was Dexter Wansel getting the full run of that album. That is jazz, funk, fusion masterclass. And, of course, Miss Carla Benson has her starring role in the solo on Tell Me Why, which Dexter also wrote. So Dexter Wansel, man, a very special talent, a dude who got his flowers. I mean, he was somebody that I wanted on the Groove Line. Like, I literally racked my brain for months trying to find a way to get Dexter Wansel on this show. Like, who has contact information with Dexter Wansel? I know somebody does, but I understand why I couldn't find it, because I guess, it was, near the end of the line for him, unfortunately. But if you don't know anything else about Philadelphia International, you need to know about Dexter Wansel. His genius as a songwriter, producer. Oh, another great sample. You big Crit fans, because I'm a big Crit fan. Remember Booby Miles from Forever and a Day? That is Morning Tears. Dexter Wansel wrote and produced that for MFSB's Philadelphia Freedom album. Philadelphia Freedom album was kind of but Morning Tears is one of the highlights. And Crit sampled that for Booby Miles. You guys know Booby Miles. A winner is a loser. Loser is a winner, doesn't play until he wins or something like that. I mean, I forgot the lyrics and I'm a big Crit fan. That is weird. But yes, Booby Miles sampled Morning Tears from Dexter Wansel. So Dexter Wansel has a lineage that his family should be proud of, that his friends, his collaborators, his, cohorts in the industry. An icon, man. An icon of fusion, an icon of jazz, an icon of synthesizers and songwriting and producing. And again, I think if Kenny Gamble, this is a hot take. I know Marcus said I got to stop sharing Marcus Chapman said I got to stop sharing my opinion on stuff and just stick to the facts. But this is my hot take. If Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff had entrusted Dexter Wansel, Gene McFadden, John Whitehead, and Victor Carl-Starfin with the keys to the Mercedes a little earlier, I think Philly International would have went a little while longer, because it was pretty much MIA by the early part of the 80s. But if Gene and John and Victor Carl-Starfin had the keys to the kingdom a little earlier, I think Philly International probably would have had a little bit longer run, because those dudes seem very young and hip and in tune with the times. Like, they would have found a way to work hip hop into Philly International. They would have found a way to work the synthesizers and the drum machines into what made it work. So that to me is just that's my opinion. But I mean, I just had to share that with y'all. But Dexter Wansel, rest in peace, one of a kind, one of the many that we seem to be losing in spades these days. Like, a lot of our OGs and trendsetters and pioneers in Black music and Black culture are leaving us. And we got to find a way to honor their memories and inspire the future generations to take up after them. So that's what this whole on the groove line thing is pretty much about, as you have already probably figured out by now. But yes, that's going to do it for day number 12 of the BMM 30 series here on the groove line. Greatly appreciate you wonderful people for tuning in. Contact information will be in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe, tap that notification bell to be notified of all new videos that drop on this channel. 12 days down, 18 to go. So that means we're 40% of the way through, 60% of the way left. What's left? Stay tuned. So thank you guys for riding with me on the groove line. And until the next time we ride, may you find the groove, or may the groove find you.